I am pretty sure that over the past 10 months or so, I have heard the terms 3-4-3, the back four, formation, system, more than I had at any point in my life leading up to this moment. Ever since Ruben Amorim came into the club, that has been the main topic of conversation. Is the 3-4-3 good enough? Can the 3-4-3 ever be good enough? Or should Amorim shift to a back four? Should he play a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1? Well, in my opinion, this is not the most important conversation to have with regards to Manchester United right now. And the reason for that is because the team that we see on paper before kickoff is not the same as what we see on a football pitch. When we get the team on paper before kickoff, we have an idea of how it's going to set up when United are playing. However, in terms of actually on the pitch, we know that it changes in every phase. For example, in the first phase, Manchester United tend to look like this on the ball. In the second phase, we tend to look a little bit more like this. And in high pressing moments, we're more in this shape before then defending deep with the back five. So the point there is, throughout the match, depending on the phase of play, you are going to be using a different shape, a different system. Bruno Fernandes made a similar comment the other day.
No, because we play with the back five, or sometimes with the back four, or the back three, or whatever you want to call it.
Now, the reason why I wanted to show you guys that is to prove my point. The starting formation is not the most important thing if the team is constantly evolving on the pitch anyway. So what's actually more important is to find the right profiles of player to play throughout the different phases. Now, to do this, today we are going to do an incredibly simple exercise to prove just how simply Manchester United can make things more natural. Now, you might be thinking I'm starting here by trying to change the formation at United, but that's not the case. This is how Manchester United currently play on goal kicks. This typically is what the personnel tends to look like, and we've got a bit of a problem because we end up with a centre-back, often De Ligt, playing in midfield, which is not optimal, that is not comfortable. In my opinion, United should try and go back to basics, get players in comfortable positions. So in the first phase, what we typically would need is two players that are comfortable facing the play. That would be two players in these positions here. I think De Ligt and Yoro, for example, make a lot of sense here. We would want two players that are comfortable playing out wide in these two zones. So that could be Mazraoui and Luke Shaw. And then we want two players that are comfortable receiving in the first phase. Now, that's probably a bit more of a problem for United because we lack that sort of profile. But Kobbie Mainoo makes sense, and let's just say Ugarte because he's a bit more light on his feet than what Casemiro is. We know that Amorim likes to target striker, so let's put Šeško in the team. And then we want three players that can dominate the second ball. Cunha and Mbeumo make sense for their physicality, and then Bruno Fernandes for his ability to play passes. Now, the important thing to note there is that I did not change the system. I didn't move United to a back four because we already play in this way on goal kicks. Ruben Amorim already uses this setup. So we still have players occupying the same zones. We just swapped a couple of players about to get them into more natural positions, to have midfielders that want to receive in midfield, to have players in the wide areas that are comfortable out wide, and the target men, the second ball players, that we need in those advanced positions. Now, something that really proves the simplicity of all of this is the fact that we can do it in the next phase as well. So let's say Manchester United have successfully built themselves up from a goal kick. What United like to do next is try, where possible, to control the ball and get into our sustained possession shape, which looks something like this. We tend to have three players across the back line, two players in midfield, which can rotate a little bit like this. Then we have two wide players, we have two narrow creators, and of course we have our striker, the main man up front. So, the question here is how can we get players into more natural positions? Right now, for example, on the left-hand side, we've got Patrick Dorgu. The problem here is he's not natural at crossing into the box. Ruben Amorim puts a massive emphasis on crosses into the penalty area. So I think the first thing that we need to try and do is get our best crosses into these positions. On the right-hand side, over than this position out here, I would say Bryan Mbeumo is probably United's best right-hand side crosser. Dalot is not. Mazraoui can be on his day. Ahmad, not a great crosser. I think Bryan Mbeumo is probably our best. On the left-hand side, we have a slight lack of options because we don't really have any left wingers. I wouldn't say Cunha is a great crosser from this position. I wouldn't say Dorgu is. So I'm going to go for Luke Shaw in this role here. And just bear with me, just stick with me through this video because hopefully by the end it's all going to make sense. In terms of what else we need, I would say in these two wider positions, this one here and this one here, we probably need players that are comfortable progressing the ball, players that are comfortable stepping out from defence and being good ball players. But also, should we lose possession, they probably need to be mobile enough to defend in wide areas. So I would say Mazraoui here probably makes a lot of sense, playing on the right-hand side. And over on the left-hand side, Lenny Yoro is probably quite a logical player for this position. If we now move back higher up the pitch into these sort of two half-space positions, which is going to be this player here and also this player here, We know what Ruben Amorim wants from these guys. Typically, he wants someone who can carry the ball, he wants someone who can gain territory in that way, but also, of course, you want creativity. Realistically, these players are going to end up in advanced positions in the final third, so you probably want players here that can create. Ruben Amorim wants that. Again, we are sticking with Amorim's shape that he uses in this phase of play, and I would say probably Cunha and Bruno Fernandes make a lot of sense here. Now, if we move ourselves a little bit deeper into midfield, into these two positions here, it's a little bit more complicated, because what Ruben Amorim wants here is players that can move the ball forward quite quickly, but we also want ball retention as well, and that's a difficult blend to come by at United because we don't have many good midfielders. I would say Kobe, I think, suits the role in terms of being someone who looks after the ball well, he being a good retention option, and then I would say in terms of the more progressive option, perhaps Casemiro could make sense in this position here. Now again, what is the key there? We did not change the system, we did not change where Manchester United are occupying on the pitch. We've still got the same zones covered. All we've done is looked at some different profiles that might make us a little bit more natural. The better crossers in the wide positions, the creative players in the middle, in advanced positions towards the opposition goal, and then those players in midfield that could retain the ball and also progress, whilst also having progressive options in defence. Now, to further prove how simple this can be and actually how basic football can be sometimes, we can look at the out of possession shape. Now, Manchester United are an inconsistent team when it comes to pressing, but when we press as our most effective, we look something like this, and the players are laid out in these positions here. Here, I think the shape from Ruben Amorim is good. The system, the setup he is trying to approach the game with is positive. But I would argue there are some players that don't quite make sense in their position. For example, Bruno Fernandes playing deep in a double pivot doesn't really make too much sense. He's not a defensive-minded player. But also, Mazraoui on the right-hand side doesn't feel particularly logical because he's not a wide midfielder. That doesn't suit his position. So what we can do is get rid of all of those players, start again, start fresh, and apply basic logic to stick to the same shape. Stick to Ruben Amorim's shape, but just change the players playing in each position. So in the front two, we probably want intensity. We want players that can lead the high press. A bit of youth in there probably provides that. Benjamin Sesko comes into the team. The other player who brings energy in terms of pressing is Bruno Fernandes, so he goes into the front two. Something else that we want is hard-working wide players, players that are willing to press high onto an opposition fullback, but also track back if needed. Now, on the right-hand side, I would say both Ahmad and Bryan Mbeumo are excellent for this role, so it really could be either of them. I would say Mbeumo is the better footballer, so he would probably come into my starting 11, but Ahmad is definitely an option. On the other side of the pitch, it's a little bit more complicated. Reason being, once again, at United, we don't really have a left-sided midfielder, I wouldn't say. Right now, we don't really have one, so it's a bit of a difficult role to fill. However, Cunha is a player who has proven since he's been at the club that he can work hard. We know that he's a player that typically plays towards the left-hand side, and he's not a full-back, so we're going to go for him in this position here. If we then go a little bit deeper in the wide zones, I think it's pretty obvious what we want. We want players that can defend wide, so why not go for two typical fullbacks? Luke Shaw and Mazraoui, they can play in these two positions. In the centre of the pitch, we want some energy. So perhaps Ugarte could be a good option for one of these roles, someone who's able to buzz about the pitch. And in terms of alongside him, Casemiro is not the most mobile, so you probably go for Kobbie Mainoo. Now, you may have noticed that as we've gone through the video, as we've gone along, looking at the different phases of play and the different shapes that Amorim uses within a match, we've used some different players. We've brought Casemiro in and then we've taken him back out again, depending on the phase. That further points to the fact that it's always changing. It's never going to be the same Manchester United 11 week in, week out. If we think we are going to play in one phase more than another on a certain week, then perhaps we bring in different personnel, we bring in a different player. The point again, though, is that the starting shape, the 3-4-3 that Manchester United use, is not the most important thing. The three systems, the three ideas, the three shapes that we have just looked at today are all things that Ruben Amorim does regularly. They are all shapes that he uses. All we have done today is move the personnel into positions where I personally think they are more comfortable. And the reason why I wanted to do that today is because I can't help but think players in their natural position are more comfortable. Players that are more comfortable find the game a little bit easier. They don't have to overthink it as much. It becomes a bit more naturally to them. You know, if I'm a right-sided player, I've always played on the right, I know what to do here. Whereas if I was suddenly on the left, it would be a bit more complicated. Getting players in their natural position, going back to basics a little bit, could be a way for Ruben Amorim to be really effective this season, while still using his 3-4-3 formation, which actually isn't important at all. It's about the shape you use in the phases, and in terms of the shapes shapes that you use in the phases. We've just discussed them today and discussed how United can fit into them, actually, potentially, really effectively. So I do feel that my job for today is now done. Now it's over to you guys to get into the comments down below and basically tell me, have you understood anything that I have said today? Have I made any sense? I really hope I have, because I think it's such an important point. What we see on paper before kickoff is not actually how it plays out on the pitch. Every team on the pitch moves into different structures, different shapes, depending on the phase of play. And Ruben Amorim is no different. It's about getting players into comfortable positions, and I think we can now do that. Did that come across? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and also let me know some different ideas that you have about how United can improve. But apart from that, we are finished for today's video. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like, subscribe, and get your notifications on so you never miss an upload or a live stream. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.